please try to go through the URL in the URL bar and try to download the slides on your side. You don't need them today, not a lot of gists, but feel free to put them on your side. This is another one of those concepts in React which is not needed but great to know. It is needed in some places. For example, when I was going through the P5JS web editor project, I saw the context API being used in a pretty, it could have been a good issue, but most probably you won't understand that issue unless you know the context API well. So not used a lot, still used, and if you don't know it, you will not be able to go through some open source projects, or generally also a lot of times you just use the context API and not some fancy things that we will discuss in weeks to come. So good thing to know, interview question, great thing to know. Ye to matlab you need to know this to build any website. Good thing to know, and something that is used in a few projects, something you might use in a few of your projects, but today is replaced by state management tools in most places. All right. All right. If people are still struggling with use memo and use callback, there is an offline video posted yesterday. You should go through that. Don't think it can get any simpler than that. So would urge you to do that. Let's wait until 7:03. Well, it is 7:03. So let's get right into it. Please download the slides on your side. The link is right here. Take a screenshot, 5 letters, type it down, and then download the slides on your side. Let's get right into it. Let's start with routing. The thing is, abhi tak we have done very, not even kiddie projects. We've pretty much done nothing in React. We've built a very simple to-do application, calculator application, and we've done a bunch of theoretical things trying to understand use memo and use callback. What we have missed out on is actually creating a real application. For example, a course selling application, an e-commerce application, LinkedIn, Facebook, Google, any application if you want to build. It will require something called routing, which is something we haven't discussed. Ideally, the way to learn React is first you learn routing, eventually use memo, use callback, you use way down the line. If you want to get a project up and running on day 0, if you're in a hackathon project and you need to build a website as soon as possible, you will focus on routing firstly, which is why this is a good point for us to first understand routing before we get into any more complicated concepts. So let's do that next. Before we get into routing, a few jargon you need to know of. These are needed. You should know them. A few of you, I'm assuming, already know them. And those who don't, the name is pretty self-explanatory. But let me go through this jargon top to bottom. The first one is called single page applications. You might have heard of this. Ke bhai, React is a single page application. What does that mean? It basically means the creators of React, whenever they created React, before React was a thing, how were websites created? Okay, bhai, if this is linkedin.com, you go to this website in your browser, you send an HTTP request, you get back an index.html file, some index.js file, so on and so forth. This is how websites were supposed to be built. Even today, sort of, this does happen. You do get back an index.html and JavaScript. But if I change my page to /messages, let's say, which basically means if there was a messages tab here in LinkedIn, which is very popularly there, if I click on it, what would happen in the pre-React days would be, I would send another request. Okay, bhai, I have changed my page. Give me back a new index.html. And you would get that, and a new page would get rendered. There would be what's called a hard reload of a page, which basically means you would see a white screen for a second, and then eventually index.html would come back, and then you would see all the colors. Your main website would get rendered. This is how things were done until React came into the picture. React lets you create single page applications. So basically means okay, only the first time when I go to linkedin.com, I get an index.html, I get an index.js, so on and so forth. as I change pages, as I click on a button here and go to my messages tab, or if I go to some other, open a messages tab from the sidebar here, there is no need for more HTML, CSS, JavaScript to come. It all came in the first go itself. It's a single page application. You have realistically a single page here, and you're just changing the view somehow rather than doing a hard reload. It's what's called client side routing. Okay, you are routing on the client. Okay, this will render, this will render, this will render. The HTML and JS is still the same, that is able to change the view here, versus how did it happen before? Anytime you change a page, you get a fresh index.html. Cool. This is how React does it. Harkirat, does it mean that if I'm on a page on linkedin.com and I go to the messages tab, no HTML, JS comes back? Almost. You can optimize your app, which we will see today also, so that if you click on messages, the part of messages or the bundle that contains the code of messages comes back after you click on it, but you don't have to. This is an optimization. If you don't want to do that optimization, you can be like, bhai, full app code come together. Index.html and the JS and the CSS files contains the code of all your pages. And even as you change your pages, no more HTML comes, only client side routing happens, which is what we're trying to learn today. That is the first jargon for the day. The second jargon for the day is client side bundle. Client side bundle, again, as the name suggests, is the bundle that you get from the backend, which basically means this HTML, CSS, JS, more specifically JavaScript is what's called the bundle. Okay, this is your final very big JavaScript file, which contains all your code for both linkedin.com, for linkedin.com/messages, for linkedin.com/whatever, all your pages that exist, all of that code is in that single JavaScript file. There are optimizations. You can take this down into multiple JavaScript files, but if you want, you can shove it all inside a single JS file, and you get that single JS file from the server and do client side routing here based on what page the user is in. You show that on the screen. All right. These are the three jargons you need to know of before we proceed. Single page applications, which all React, Vue, all front-end frameworks, where you're dynamically changing the page and not refetching something from the backend, are called single page applications. Client side bundle, the big bundle that you get on the client that has all your JavaScript code, and client side routing, the code that you write as the application developer to make sure ki haan bhai, if the user is on the messages page, show them their messages. If they're on the landing page, show them the landing page, so on and so forth. Three jargons you need to know of. Good checkpoint. If you don't understand, it's fine, but good to know. I might keep saying these terms again and again. For example, client side routing. I might use this term very often today, which is why it's good to know. What is routing? Or more specifically, what are routes? This thing at the end. We have done it in Express as well. Express mein, we said there are backend routes. Here, these are basically the front-end routes. Okay, if I am on linkedin.com/feed, I see my feed. If I'm on linkedin.com/messaging/thread/something, I am in my messages tab and I see all of my messages. For example, I have a message here by someone. These are what are called routes. How do you create an application in which you can handle these routes, in which you can render a specific page given a route? If the person is on /feed, they see some React component. If they are on /messaging, they see some other React component. How can you do this? Client side routing. How to do routing in React? The answer is something called, well, there are many frameworks. One of them is React Router DOM, probably the most popular one. The name itself says it is a router for DOM. What are other routers? Well, you could have another one for React Native as well, right? Mobile apps also have the concept of routing. In a mobile app, when you click on a button, another page comes up. And so there is the concept of routing in mobile apps as well. This project lets you do routing on the DOM, which basically means inside a website. It actually lets you do mobile as well, but let's not get there. All right. That is the library we need to use to do client side routing. So at this point, you can read through the docs if you want. It is an incredibly vast sort of a project. Gives you 10 different ways to do routing. The most popular one is the one we'll discuss today. But if you get ever into more complicated use cases, for example, if you're building a Chrome extension, then you have to use some complicated things here. We are doing a basic website similar to LinkedIn. So let's understand how do you do basic routing in React. This is the code for it. First, let's digest the code, then let's look at the API. It says that bhai, browser router is a top level component which wraps something else. Have we seen this before? I introduced the concept of children a few classes ago. I said that bhai, in React, share my screen. I said in React, you're allowed to if there is a component, this component can take what as input? It can take props as input, which can be a number, can be a string, or it can be another component. So one component can use another component and render it inside. Here, if you remember, I introduced the concept of children. Ki bhai, if there is a component 1, which let's say returns a simple div, and then there is a component 2 which takes children as an input. This component 2 can return a div which renders the children, if you remember from a few classes ago. And what did this mean? This basically meant that bhai, one second here, basically meant that now I can do a comp2/comp2 and I can wrap another component inside like comp1, or I can write something like this, div. I can write as much XML inside, and whenever component 2 gets rendered, it gets this children as an input here, even though I'm not passing it a prop. I'm not saying children equal to something. Still, if it wraps another sort of XML inside, you can get access to that in this children prop. And then if I render it here, it basically renders it. You can basically do a bunch of things with these children. You get access to everything that you wrap. And similarly, if you look at the code here, it says browser router, which is something React Router DOM gives you, the library that we are using, needs to wrap all the routes, which needs to wrap all your routes for your application. And let's say you have a basic application which has only 2 pages, /dashboard and /, and we want /dashboard renders the dashboard component and / renders the landing component, which basically stands for the landing page, the page that you see when you land on the website. This much code is enough for you to do client side rendering, which basically means this much code is enough for you to create a dynamic application which only gets the bundle once, and then based on the current route renders the right page, be it this page or be it this page. Let's try to code this on our machine and try to understand it a little better. So would urge you to create a fresh React project and add React Router DOM as a dependency in that project. I'm going to give you guys 1 minute to do it. Take a minute, create a fresh project locally and add React Router DOM as a dependency. We'll play with it a little bit. I'm going to do the same. For the people who don't remember, the way to create a fresh React app locally is npm create vite@latest. Give your project a name, I'm going to name it week 7.1. Select a framework, select the language, which is JavaScript in our case, and that's it. Now open this folder in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to wait for 30 more seconds. Oh, everyone's saying it is lagging. Well, the good thing is we have created a in-house solution, which I'm going to test at the end of the class today. So if you want to stick around for that, stick around for that. If there is a bad lag, the solution is pretty elegant, and the goal is to try it end of class today. It'll be on the website, and yeah. So hopefully that fixes it. If Zoom cannot fix this, I don't know what will. I don't know if it's my machine or if it's something else. But okay, let's wait until end of class and try a different provider. All right, there we go. Let's open terminal. Let me do a quick poll. Actually, if it's really bad, we can switch right now as well. Is the lag really bad? Is the lag really bad? Oh no. Let me ask a good question. Let me create a poll. I will confuse everyone here. Do you see a lag which is unbearable? Yes, no. All right. Launch. Okay, 23% basically means there is a lag. Cool guys. Let's not break the flow here, but if you think it's too unbearable, feel free to drop off and look at the recording. I'm recording it locally, so it will be a prime recording when it reaches you. Feel free to drop off. If you want to stick as well. At the end of the class, let's try out the other platform that we have built. Until then, npm install here, followed by adding a new dependency. What is that dependency called? It's called React Router DOM. So run this command in the specific folder that you're in, and then do the standard things that I've talked about, which is get rid of all the default CSS that you get in app.css and index.css, open app.jsx, and clean up the whole file. All right. Now let's start to write the code that does client-side routing. First thing before you do that is that you need to create two components, one for the landing page and one for the dashboard page, basically similar to LinkedIn, right? If you go to LinkedIn, there is some React component that renders all of these things. There is some React component that renders all of these things. Let's first create these components, and then we can come back to adding all the routing here. So for that, you can create components here, but ideally you should structure your app a little better. So I would urge you to create a new folder here, call it components, or you can call it pages if you want, because these are the pages that you're rendering. And here add a dashboard.tsx, or sorry, JSX, and landing.jsx. Two components that you are going to create now that you will use in app.jsx rather than defining them in the same file. And what is the code here? Just export a function. So export space function space the name of your component, which I'm writing landing here, which returns landing page. That's it. That's good enough. We don't need any fancy pages for now. And then the same thing inside your dashboard.jsx file. Going to give you guys 30 seconds to write 2 files, put them in the components folder. This is the code, hopefully straightforward. Going to paste it in chat as well if you want to copy it. Ten seconds. All right. Now let's write all of our logic to do client side routing. The way to do that, if you remember from the slides, was first wrap everything inside a browser router, which as you can see, it automatically imported it from React router DOM. Then routes, which again, thanks to VS Code, it automatically adds the import. If it does not on your side, you will have to import these by hand. And lastly, all your routes, which in our case, there is a route, which also I need to import from here. Path equal to / dashboard, element equal to the dashboard component. And then another one below it with the path as / and the element as landing. Imported correctly at the top, used over here. All right, going to wait for 15 seconds for you to breathe the code in, but this is pretty much it. This is what client side routing is. You can make it more fancy. I'll show you how. This is a good, gist of what client side routing is in React. This is one of the first frameworks that would let you do routing. Today things have gotten very fancy and everyone uses Next.js, which has something called file-based routing. We will get to it when we reach Next.js. But until we reach Next.js, this is how routing used to be done. Even today in a React application, if you're creating a pure React application, this is how you would do routing. People do a bunch of things where you can create, excuse me. You can create an array at the top, which looks something like this: route equal to / component equal to dashboard. So you can do this. Basically, if you open a random project, a lot of times you might not see this. You might see, them iterating over a routes array, which has all the routes. So you can, move around the files and find how they have done routing. In the end, the code resolves to something like this. Let's try to open it up. npm run dev. And let's see if it works as expected or not. I am on / or the index endpoint, and I do see landing page. I go to / dashboard and I see the dashboard page. What if I go to a random route? I see nothing because, nothing inside here got matched to a component. Now comes the slightly interesting bit of, how do you think LinkedIn does it? Do you think LinkedIn does the same thing? If you look at LinkedIn, notice between these two pages, the top bar is constantly there. I repeat, it is the same top bar in both of these. Things below it have changed, but the top bar, this top bar right here, LinkedIn home messages, is the same in both the pages. Can you do something similar in our case? can we somehow have a fixed top bar and only the contents below change? Can you think of something you can do here to achieve that? Take some time. Maybe if you were testing it, test it on your side. If you're seeing errors, oh, heavy lag. Let me join for another laptop.
Recording in progress.
Take your time, guys. Let me figure things out here. Let me not do this.
Recording in progress.
Shall I proceed? Yes or no, guys? Are we good to go? Shall I proceed? Yes. All right. Great. 88%. So I'm going to proceed. For the people who are seeing lag, I am recording it locally. I will post it. Feel free to drop off if it's a bad experience. All right. I was saying, how do I add a top bar? And the answer is this, right? This browser router is just another component which will try to render, has some logic to render conditionally based on the current route. You can add whatever code you want above it. I can be like, hi, this is the top bar, and then style equal to background black. If I add this logic, what have I done? Wrapped the whole thing inside a div and created a top bar. Okay, bhai, this to remains constant irrespective of what route is there. Here, a certain route gets rendered based on what page you are on. If I save this, and feel free to write this on your side as well, going to give you guys 15 seconds. Make sure you're wrapping the whole thing inside a div. Please don't do this. We have discussed a few times that you cannot return two siblings from a component. You have to wrap them inside a div. So make sure there's a top level div followed by this div right here. If you want, give it a background color. If not, that's fine as well. If you are giving it a black background color, make sure you're changing the font color to white, else you won't see black on black. 5 more seconds. As you can see, there is a top bar. If I go to /dashboard, there is a top. The top bar remains consistent. Content below changes. All right. This is how you can create something like LinkedIn. Of course, you have to do 10 different things to make it pretty. I have not done it. But yeah, this is how client side routing, basic checkpoint happens. Of how you can add multiple pages here if need be. Now comes one very important question, which you should have had at this point. Okay, Harkirat, if this is a single page application like you've been saying, and if clicking on a button here takes me to a different page, would that mean that index.html is not coming back from the server? Let me repeat. Good question to ask at this point is, Harkirat, we have created a single page application with 2 pages, right? This is a single page application. It has 2 pages. Let's say I want to add a top bar here, a button here, a button here. This button says landing. This button says dashboard. And when you click on it, person goes to landing page. When you click on this, oopsie daisy. When you click on this, person goes to the dashboard page and you can switch between them. Can we create this very quickly? I'm sure you guys can. Try it. I'm going to create it very soon as well. And when we do create it, bigger question is, when we do create it, and as the person switches from here to here, does a fresh index.html come back from the server or not. That is what we need to figure out, right? That's what I've been kept saying. If you're using client-side rendering the right way, you will not get a fresh bundle every time. You are doing all the routing client-side. You don't need the server anymore. Have we done that? Have we written the logic for it? Let's try that out. First, create 2 buttons in the top bar that let you switch between routes. Let's make this simple. Question is, what happens on click? How do I change the page on click? There are many ways. One of them, the most simple one, is this: window.location.href equal to /dashboard. And here it will be slash, and here it will be /dashboard. What have I said? I said we have 2 buttons. Clicking on this changes window.location.href equal to /. Harkirat, what is this new thing that you have written here? This global location object is something you have access to in HTML or inside your DOM more specifically. Let's explore this a little bit. Let's explore this location object a little bit. First, write down this code, and then we'll explore it a little bit and understand what this is. Okay? Take 15-20 seconds. Create the 2 buttons that let you switch between routes, and then we'll go from there. Maybe feel free to try it out on your side as well. All right, let me proceed. If I go back to the browser and refresh, I see 2 buttons. It does seem to do the same thing. Seems like I have something like LinkedIn. I am doing client-side routing, or am I? Let me first open the console and show you guys what the location object is. If you inspect and click on console, try to log location here, and you will see it gives you a bunch of things. This is the URL, this is the href, host name, bahut kuch. Important thing is location.href is the current route or the current full URL plus the route. And if I ever change this, right, equal to /dashboard, it does change the page to /dashboard. Again, you can totally do http://localhost:5173/dashboard, or you can do just dashboard. Each one of these will make the page go to the other page. That is how we have done page movements until now. But is this right, or is there a flaw here? Let's see. What did I say? I said if you're doing client-side routing, if you change the page, you get no HTML from the backend, no JavaScript from the backend. But is that happening? If I go to the console, open the network tab and click on dashboard, you will see everything comes back again. Dashboard page comes back again, client, main.jsx, everything is coming back. And same is true for this. In fact, you will notice there is some reloading happening here. There is some refresh happening in my top bar here. That tells you that we are not really doing client-side routing. We are still refreshing the page. We are still reloading the page. We are still bringing HTML again from the backend and putting it here. Why? The reason is because we have used this way to route from one page to another. This is not the right way to go from one page to another if you are using client-side rendering or client-side routing, sorry. This is just this is similar to me opening landing in another page and fetching HTML again. That is why you see this big reload here. This is similar to just the person replacing this with landing and pressing enter. And of course, if you do that, you will again get index.html. Your browser will think I need to refetch index.html from the backend. So what is the right way of doing client-side routing so that we don't get it again and only React under the hood changes the routes from whatever, this to this and changes the component. We don't refetch the landing page. The answer is, let's go back to the slides here. Using the use navigate hook. The use navigate hook lets you, as the name suggests, navigate from one route to another. And if you are using this hook that is exported from where? From the React router DOM library, it makes sure it is not doing a hard reload of the page. It is simply changing the route, keeping the same client bundle and changing the page because the route has changed. So this is the right way to switch from one page to another when you are doing client-side routing. React Router DOM provides you a hook that lets you do the same thing. So let's try this hook and see if that actually works as expected. I think it is going to give us an error, but we will see very soon. Let's see. Let's replace window.location.href with const navigate equal to use navigate, which comes from where? It comes from React Router DOM. And then let's try to call navigate with slash, and here as well. Feel free to do it on your side as well. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. What have I changed? Imported the use navigate hook from here, called it, and then called it here and initialized it here and called it here and here. This is the right way to do navigation so that you don't fetch the index.html, index.javascript bundle again and again. Waiting for 15 more seconds. I think this will break, by the way. I don't think this will work. I could be wrong. We'll see. All right, let me paste a gist of this. So if you want to just copy it, feel free to copy it as well. This is the URL, pasting it in chat as well. Please take a screenshot, 5 more seconds. Let's see if this works as expected or not. Only thing we have changed is how we are navigating to a different page. Refresh and we see an error, which is what I was expecting as well. Yeah, there is an error. What is the error? Here you will learn something new today, which is this use navigate hook expects that bhai, whenever you are using me, make sure you are using me in a component that's inside browser router. I repeat, you cannot use navigate outside a component that is not in a component that is not inside browser router. If all of this logic and even this navigate was inside the browser router, then navigate would be like, acha, this is my papa, this is my parent browser router, which has all the routing thingy. I'm going to use and navigate the user here. But if you try to use this here outside browser router, it will fail. That is the error that we are seeing. Can you guess how to fix it? Can I put a component here, call it app bar, and then put all the routing logic inside? Rather than putting an app bar here, I'm going to put it here. That's the first thing I'm doing. And what is the second thing? The bigger problem. This is not enough. You cannot invoke this hook outside browser router. This hook can only be invoked in a component that is inside browser router, not in a component that is outside browser router. That is the problem we're trying to fix. So this solves that issue. Okay, we have created a separate app bar component where we are rendering the app bar and also doing the routing, because Browser router, okay, inside I can use the use navigate hook. I cannot use it over here. It will give me an error purely because this, all of this, I cannot use the route outside here as well, right? I cannot be like route here. It won't. The browser router has some logic, expects these as children, gets these as children, and is able to do things with it and route things correctly. So you cannot put things outside, specifically the navigation things outside, which is why this should fix our problem. Let me first test this, and I'm happy to share this with you as well. But let's wait for 15 seconds. Try to write this code locally as well. Try to create another app bar component where you're using the use navigate hook, and then routing the person between pages. 10 more seconds. All right. Now let's refresh. Notice you don't see any reload here anymore as I switch between pages. It's pretty instant. And if I click on inspect and go to network, I don't see any fresh HTML coming back as I switch between pages. This is the right way to do client side routing. Now all you have to do is make a prettier, put a few pretty things there, create a prettier top bar, but routing is being done the right way. If you're creating LinkedIn, if you're creating some other fancy website, this is the right way to do routing. In React, this changes a lot as you move to Next.js, but in React, this is great. If you look at the code, it's not too heavy. The only thing to keep in mind is that whatever uses this use navigate hook needs to be inside the browser router. All right. Now I'm going to copy this and create a gist. If you weren't able to follow along, try to paste the gist on your side and understand it. Let's quickly go through prop drilling as well, and then we'll take a break. This is the URL where you can find. Oh, sorry, I'm not pasting it, am I? This is the URL for the current code, which looks something like this. All right. Cool. Actually, we have one more thing to learn here before we actually move on to prop drilling. I'm going to take a pause, 10-second breather, and then we will proceed. Can we use link instead of use navigation? You can. That also works. Yeah. A lot of times link you can use everywhere you are using link. You can use navigate. Everywhere you're using use navigate, you cannot use link, which is why I haven't introduced it. All right. Cool, guys. Everything is great. This is almost enough routing. If you go to the docs of React Router DOM, you will see a bunch of other things, but this is great for a website. There's one key insight that I've missed, or like one key optimization that these guys give you that I would like to share, which is called lazy loading. You will see this in a few websites, and interview question, good to know. What is lazy loading? Let me share my screen one more time. As I said, the way we have written the code, complete bundle comes back. Index.html, index.js, so on and so forth. Complete bundle comes back all at once. And then you do whatever client side routing you want. What is the problem in this approach? The problem is, okay, bhai, a lot of times person will just come to the landing page. They will not go to the dashboard page or some other page. Why are you getting the full index.js file, which contains the code of the landing page as well, if the person is just on the dashboard, or vice versa? The website could have 20 different pages. If the person goes to page 1, should they not only receive the code for page 1? And then if they route to page 2, shouldn't they then receive the code for page 2? so on and so forth. Wouldn't that be nice, cleaner, more optimal? Not giving them the complete big bundle all at once, but giving them a smaller bundle first. And then when they switch to another page, giving them another bundle, another page, another bundle. Basically, incrementally giving them the website rather than giving them the whole thing together. That would be great. This is something very commonly people knew. Okay, this is a common use case that will come up, and hence React Router DOM introduced something called lazy loading, which basically states that bhai, you can change your code a little bit, and if you do, we will make sure that if the person is on page 1, they will only get the bundle, the main React bundle, and the code for page 1. And if they go to page 2, will they get the extra code for page 2? If they go to page 3, will they get the extra code for page 3? So on and so forth. They will lazily load more page code, the components that the person is not currently on. Okay? This is the code for it. Slightly different from how we have written it, but not too far from it. What does it say? It says that bhai, whatever your component you have, wrap it inside a react.lazy. Your component with some extra syntax, react.lazy, which takes a function as an input, which will lazily import your component when it needs it. Once you have this, put this in your element and not, the dashboard that was exported from here, the lazy version of that dashboard put here. If you do just this much code change, you will have a slightly more optimal website. So let's try to write this. I think looking at it is much easy. Writing it is harder. So look at it once and then try to write it yourself. Okay? One thing you will have to do is change how dashboard is being exported. Let's do that first. Let's do that together. But then once we have exported dashboard the right way, importing it, look at it, and then try to code it yourself rather than, looking at the slides. Okay? Let me go back to the code and change one small thing, which is how we are exporting dashboard and landing. Go to dashboard.tsx or JSX, sorry. And rather than doing export function dashboard, write export default function dashboard. What does this default mean? If I add default here, it basically means rather than importing dashboard like this, I would import dashboard like this. Because the default export of that file is dashboard now. Earlier, it was the constant export of this website. Okay, my dashboard is exported as this, and then I could add another const a equal to 1, and then b equal to something, so on and so forth. I can add multiple constant exports. I can add only one default export of the website, which is what I'm doing both for dashboard and for landing. Cool. Going to wait for 5 seconds, maybe more, 10 seconds. Just replace the exports. And once that is done, try remembering the logic a little bit that we saw a few slides ago and try to replace your imports in app.jsx. I'm going to give you guys 20 seconds to try it out yourself, and then I will do it. How will this change? All right, time for me to code. What did I say? React dot lazy and the function inside, and same for landing. Cool. That is all that you had to do. Only change the imports a bit, and then you're good to go. Your routes will now lazily load rather than loading all at once. Like here, what is react.lazy? It is just another thing React exports, right? I can totally be like import lazy from React and then put lazy here. This works as well. Or I can do a react.lazy, either is fine. Just how React exports use state, use callback, use memo. React also exports lazy, which we're using right here. All right. I think this is good enough. I don't think I'm missing anything. Let's try this out and see if it works as expected or not. It does not. Seems like I'm missing something obvious here. Oh, maybe the syntax is incorrect. Or maybe I have to do, no. Oh, yes, the syntax is incorrect. Import. This is the right syntax. I also have to add an import to the file name and not just the file name. All right. Let's try that one more time. Another error. Let's make this lazy. This is why I should go on. All right. It is this, guys. Hopefully you guys were better at looking at the syntax than I was. This is what you have to write, not what I had written. If you go back to the slides, const dashboard equal to react.lazy equal. This tells you I don't use this very often. I just non-lazily put all my routes there. But this is the right way to do it. This was the syntax. This is what I was missing. Now I think it should work. Const dashboard equal to this and then const landing equal to this. All right. Let's see. There we go. And padya. Okay. Breathe in, breathe out. There's one more thing missing here, but I want to let people who want to go to mess go. So if you want to go to mess, feel free to. I will write some code right now and then explain it. Basically, we have to introduce the suspense API here. And if you want to go to mess 10 minutes ke baad, I will repeat everything I will do in the next 10 minutes. If you want to stay, feel free to stay. Let's look at how I would debug the error that came here, which is this code is almost enough. There is one small thing missing that we need to fix. And again, what did I change? I lazily loaded dashboard and landing. All right, chalo. Let's fix what's wrong here. What is it? Component is binded. Yeah, exactly. So let's do. Two we needed though. If you want to debug it on your side, let me push this code in as well. So if you want to debug it on your side, you can, because that's the best way to learn. There is an error here. There is a very small error here. Try to Google, try to ChatGPT. We are taking a 10-minute break. We will restart at 8:05. Until then, there is one small bug in this code base that you need to fix or try to fix. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Let me quickly add a repository and push the code so you can reach the same code that I have locally. week-7-mess up code. All right, you can find the code here. Let me try to fix it on my side. Would urge you to try to fix it on your side as well. Google, ChatGPT, there is an error in the console. Try to read through the error and it will tell you a few things. All right, component suspended. 10-minute break, guys. And if someone knows the fix already, feel free to create a pull request even before, if you can fix this even before me. Unsure if you can, but try. All right, that was it. Never mind, I already fixed it. So, but this is break time, so going to look at Q&A. I will explain what I added, by the way, like what is this suspense. A few people already posted the same in Q&A as well, so kudos to you. 8 more minutes of break. Let me open chat now. So if anyone has questions related to the things we've discussed until now, please post them. I'm opening chat. All right, I don't think I can take these many questions, but let me start from the top. Whoever is facing lag, maybe they have internet issue. On my side, everything working fine. That sounds good. E.prevent default use karo to window location. No, it will still not work. Whoever is facing lag, okay, answer that. Can we use link instead of use navigation? You can. There are some use cases where you have to use navigation and use navigate, whatever, and link will not work. What is this use case? Sometimes you don't want to take a person from one page to another only when they click. Sometimes you might have to navigate them automatically. So then link won't work. Link only works if you expect a user to click on a button and then navigate them to another page, which is why use navigate is good to know. But can you use link? Yes. Where can we check if lazy loading is working or not? Can we check if the bundle size? Yeah, exactly. So I will show that very soon, but the high level is the way to check that is if you go here, you can just go to the network tab, and if you click on landing now, you will see landing.jsx come from the backend now, which tells you ki the first time let's say I'm on landing page, the first time I loaded it, dashboard ka code did not come. How do I know this? If I click on dashboard, is when dashboard.jsx actually came to the front end. So that is how you can confirm. Can you explain export default? So this is not React specific. This is generally true. Okay, when you're using this import export syntax, you can either be like export const x equal to 1, export const y equal to 2, so on and so forth. You can export multiple constants, or export function dashboard. You can either do this. And how do you import these? You import these like this: import x, y, dashboard. You object destructure x, y, and dashboard. But if you want, this by default exports something, which means whoever is importing it imports it like this: imports dashboard from whatever. Then you need to do a const export, a default export here. Export default function dashboard. You can still do constant exports. This can also be like dashboard x, y. But in our case, since we only need this to give the main component as a default export, I put a export default function here. All right. Back to chat. But what about fetching API data from the backend, getting separate data from dashboard and separate landing? Will navigate fetch that? Oh, no, navigate won't fetch that, but you will have all that logic here, right? Inside your dashboard, you will have a use effect which will do the fetch to get all the backend data. The backend data you still need to get. You will still need to send out a backend request. This becomes untrue when we move to React. When we move to Next. But for now, yes, you need to. When you switch on the page, here is where you will write the logic to hit your backend APIs. Not somewhere here. Navigate won't give you that. You have to add that logic in your dashboard component. Children concept explain again. So let's say there is a function component 2 function. And I say, component 2 can take let's say I ask you to create a component that puts everything inside a bold tag, which basically means boldify. If I ask you to create a component called boldify, which takes some React code as an input or React components as an input and converts them to bold, how will you do this? You can do something like this. Okay, bhai, whoever is using the boldify component can give me some children, can give me some code inside, which I will wrap inside bold, and that way, now if you look at the final screen, hi there will be boldified. Hi there is boldified. Why is this good? Why should you do this? Because I have created a single component that a lot of people can use and send me HTML as a prop, or not HTML, like React components as a prop. So, you know, that is what children lets you do. And the important thing to note here, the reason I introduced that was because here browser router needs to have children which have all of your code. If we do React lazy works fine. If we import lazy from React, throws an error. Is that so? That would be very surprising. Oh. Someone said that it will work without the suspense API if you are using React lazy instead of lazy. That would be very surprising if true. No, it did not work. All right. 2 more minutes. Bhai load jaldi free kar do. By free ho jo yaar, you will get a recording of the video anyways. How do we do fancy styling in React? How do we do fancy styling? Oh, we use Tailwind. We'll get to it in like 2 or 3 classes. Doesn't lazy loading mean we are fetching data again from the server? Does no client-side routing? No. The routing is still client-side. You are still not getting the whole thing again. You are getting just the part of it. So it is still client-side routing. It's just more optimized client-side routing. Can I use navigate to? Yes, you can. It's working on my side. How to stop re-rendering navbar while routing? You cannot. I mean, you can wrap it inside a memo if you want, but that's it really. Yeah, you can wrap it inside a memo. I think that'll do it. How will you authenticate the routes? The dumb way to do this is, you know, here you will check, add an effect or whatever, have a const loading, comma set loading, state variable, initialize it to false, and then, you know, have an effect inside which you actually authenticate the user. And if the person does get authenticated, then do a set loading false. So this will be true. Then, you know, return if loading, return loading, and then yahan pe if not authenticated, then redirect the user, something like that. There are more fancy ways to doing it as well. Like take a raw way if you're asking, like from first principles, that is how you would do it. What is lazy? Basically something React provides you that lets you do this, you know, that lets you lazily fetch things. All right. It's 8:05, so I will have to proceed. 2 things have changed for the people who are just joining. Not 2 things, just 1 thing I had to change, which was while I was doing the import is still the same, lazily import dashboard, but rather than rendering it directly, I have to wrap it inside a suspense, which is another API that React provides you, which is used for cases like this when you have asynchronous component fetching, or even a lot of times asynchronous data fetching, which basically means what is happening here. Now dashboard is asynchronous. Now when you're on the website and you go from here to here, it will take a few seconds for React to fetch your component from the backend, which is why this becomes asynchronous. And whenever you have asynchronous components. This isn't exactly an asynchronous component, but whenever you don't have access to this immediately on the front end, you can confirm that if you open inspect and go to network tab. And if I refresh the page, I got back my website. Let me clear everything. Let me click on landing. You see landing.jsx now comes from the backend to your front end. And this could take 2 seconds, this could take 5 seconds, this could take 100 seconds. It depends on your internet connection. During that time, what will this guy render? This will be like, I have to render dashboard, but I don't have dashboard. It's coming from the backend, right? For cases like these, React provides you the suspense API, which basically says, if this component is suspended, if this data is not yet there, it's going to come eventually, render the fallback, which in our case is loading ... So if I render this fallback, if you actually notice, for 1 second there will be loading ... here. It's happening very quickly, which is why you don't see it. But there is actually, when the first time I switch from page to a different one, it will show you loading ... for just a minute second before it actually shows you the landing page here. If you really squint your eyes, you might see loading ... maybe not either. It happens for a minute second. So that is what the suspense API lets you do. The original problem we did was we did not wrap this inside the suspense. And then if you looked at the error said clearly, there is an asynchronous data, that component that is not being fetched. So you should wrap it inside a suspense. And that's what a lot of people figured out as well. And that's what I figured out as well. You have to wrap this inside a suspense. And then you have a mildly more optimized client-side rendering application, a client-side routing application. Cool. That is all for routing. Let's move to the next set of slides. Practice this a little bit more. Do you need lazy loading? Yes, it is good to have it in your website. There's no downside to having it. But does your app work without it as well? Works. Most small applications wouldn't even care to add this optimization. But if your application becomes really big, it has 100 pages, then it 100% makes sense for you to lazily load pages. What is the wrong thing here? The only wrong thing here is you need to wrap this inside a suspense. All right, easy. Routing is done. Prop drilling and context API. Let's get into these. Let's begin with prop drilling. Before we begin, how do you think one should manage state? We have created very simple applications until now, but as your application grows, for example, let's say you're trying to build LinkedIn, you will have a very big state object. It will have your name, your notification count, all of your notifications, all of your messages, all of your connection requests, all of your current connections. It's a very big object. Where should you store this very big object? Or, let's say individual state variables. One state variable called messages, one state variable called connection requests, so on and so forth. Should you store it here in app.jsx? Should you store it in some child component like connection requests.tsx or messages.tsx? Where should this state be stored? Keep everything at the top level component C1 or keep everything at as low as possible. What do you think is the right approach here? We have discussed this once. The ideal answer here is that you keep it at some low level component. Basically means that bhai, if this is your app.jsx, which renders, let's say, first the app bar and then renders a feed component, which has your feed, which has, all of your posts that you see on your feed. This feed will be a use state variable. It will be a state variable. Should you store this feed here or should you store it here? You should store it here. You should try to push down state as much as possible. Why? Because if feed ever updates, as you scroll your page, your feed on LinkedIn will update, the state variable will update, and that will trigger a re-render. You don't want app.jsx to re-render if it's not even using feed. Neither is app bar using feed. But if this guy re-renders, then this will also re-render and this will also re-render. So what can you do? You can push the state down to feed.jsx and be like, okay, if feed changes, you re-render. App, the top level app doesn't need to re-render. App bar also does not need to re-render. This is why you always try to push down state as much as possible. And if you remember, I introduced the concept of lowest common ancestor. Okay, bhai, if this is your component tree, and there is a state variable that needs to be used here and here, then where will you store it? You will store it in their least common ancestor, which is this guy right here. Here is where you will define your const feed comma set feed equal to use state empty array. Okay, so what's the rule of thumb? So you can still store it here and pass it down as props here, but you don't have to, right? You just need to store it in the least common ancestor, so that yahan se you can pass it down here and you can pass it down here, which can pass it down here. This guy doesn't need to have it. This guy doesn't need to have it. All right. The rule of thumb is push it down as much as possible. All right. Let's see a few examples. Let's see a few examples, then we'll understand prop drilling. Let's create an application. So let's remove all of this. Let's clean up our code base. I would urge you to do the same. So no more routing now. So get rid of React Router DOM if you want, whatever. Create a fresh project. And here, create a component, call it count. Create another component, call it buttons. All right. Create 3 components, count and buttons. Define a state variable. Count, initialize it to 0, and then render both this count variable, component, and this buttons component. All right. Write this much code locally, and then we will proceed. A count component, a buttons component, and render this. We'll play a little bit with the props and try to understand what's up, like what prop drilling is. I think we'll reach the context API by tomorrow. So let's try to just understand prop drilling today. If you understand prop drilling, context API isn't too difficult. Probably. We'll see. All right. I'm going to give you guys 10 seconds. Try to copy this. The goal is you have an application where someone can come and increase and decrease count variables, or a global count, and then that gets rendered in this count component. So you have a global count, and there are 2 buttons, one for increasing that count, one for decreasing that count. That's the goal of what we're building today. All right. Cool. What should this guy render? It should render the count, which it will get as an input. Cool. What should buttons render? It should render 2 buttons. One for increasing the count, one for decreasing the count. Taking a pause here. Take your time. Try to write this code locally. Happy to push it in the gist as well. Let me do that. So this is the where you can find the current code. Going to paste it in chat. This is where you can find the current code, which I've written here on my machine. Try to write it yourself or copy it. Either way, you have 10 seconds. All right, let's open this up. You will see there is a count, increase button, decrease button. The only functionality that is missing is this is not increasing and decreasing the count. So let's do that next. Buttons may pass in count as a state variable and also set count as a state variable. This will get count, set count. Hopefully this is straightforward. Just passing count and set count as props down here and rendering, increasing the count and decreasing the count. Simple, straightforward. Even if you aren't able to write it, it's fine as long as you understand it. It's basic stuff. Now I ask you, okay, nahi, these buttons need to be inside count, Harkirat. These buttons need to be inside the count component. So basically, I ask you to do this. What is the problem if you push buttons down to count? The problem is that set count doesn't exist as a prop here. So now, if I ask you, okay, yaar Harkirat, these buttons need to be part of the count component, and if you push this down here, what do you have to do? You have to pass set count as a component here, as a prop here, even though count doesn't really need set count. This component doesn't really need the set count component. It is only taking it and passing it down to another child, right? It is just taking it and passing it down to another child. Doesn't really need it. This is where things begin to get ugly. Okay, bhai, this is the parent component. It renders a child component, which renders another child component. This guy needed set count. This guy had set count. This guy had to pass it down. This guy had to be just a mediator between its child component and its parent component for set count. This is bad. This is where code begins to get really ugly, because you start, if you really push, if you have, let's say, a bunch of 10 different state variables here, and there is something being used way down the chain, you have to pass it down the chain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across a lot of components. That visually gets a little unappealing, becomes slightly unmanageable to keep passing down props. And that is what is called prop drilling. What are you doing? You are drilling down the props. If there is a component C1, C2, C3, C4. If there is something that C4 needs and this guy has, and neither this guy needs, they still need to get it as a prop and pass it down. Get it as a prop, pass it down. They need to keep passing props down the chain so that this guy can use what it needs and is being stored here. Harkirat, why are you storing it here? Because there might be another component that might need the same thing. So if there is a state variable that needs to be used here and here, you will have to store it in their lowest common ancestor, which is this guy right here, and you will have to pass it down via these two, which is bad, because neither is this guy using it, neither is this guy using it. They are just passing it down, taking it from one, passing it down. This is what's called prop drilling. It is an anti-pattern because of how unmanageable it makes the code. It has nothing to do with re-rendering. Prop drilling specifically is not a bad thing because it causes re-renders. It's a bad thing because it makes the code visually very unappealing to look at as your state grows by a lot and your components grow by a lot. Okay? This is what prop drilling is. Let's look at the slides again. Before we begin, how do you think we will answer that? Either way, irrespective of whether or not you push down state as much as possible, or if you store it at the very top in app.jsx, either way, you will need to drill props down through the component tree. This gets very hard to maintain and highly verbose and makes your code highly unreadable as your props keep going down the chain. Prop drilling doesn't mean that the parent re-renders children. It means that the syntactical uneasiness while writing the code. Again, you might feel like, Acha, Harkirat, you're saying this because props are going down and the re-render will happen, and then this is using state, this is using state, but this guy's re-rendering. Is that what prop drilling is? No. Prop drilling is just how ugly it looks when you're passing down components and has nothing to do with re-rendering. Standard interview question. components are still getting re-rendered. Yes, if there is a state variable here that changes, then this gets re-rendered, this gets re-rendered, this gets re-rendered, everything gets re-rendered. But that's not what prop drilling is. Prop drilling is just the visual uncomfort of passing these down. The problem with passing props. Passing props is a great way to explicitly pipe data through your UI tree to the components that use it. But passing props can become very verbose and inconvenient when you need to pass some props deeply through the tree, or if many components use the same prop. The nearest common ancestor could be far from the component that needs the data, and lifting the state up that high can lead to a situation called prop drilling. This is the official definition of prop drilling that you can find on react.dev. Okay, where you are using a state variable and where it is being defined might be really far, and hence you might have to drill it down the chain, which is hard to read, and that's what prop drilling is. This is a very good definition of it, what it is. Feel free to come back to this, pause it and read it. But this is what the definition of prop drilling is. This is why it's bad. The context API. This guy lets you fix prop drilling. How, we will see very soon. But why do we use context API? Okay, it makes it very easy for you to pass state variable between components without drilling them down. It lets you teleport state components. Let's look at that next. Very good resource to learn it yourself if you want to. Very nice. This specific definition was actually joined from here only. So if you want to learn it yourself, or try it out later on, very nice resource to learn how context happens under the hood, and what it exactly does, in case you want to try it out yourself. A lot of these docs are from there only. The problem with passing props, we just read this. I just told you that there is a problem of prop drilling. Wouldn't it be great if there was a way to teleport data to the components in the tree that need it without passing the props? With React's context feature, there is. So wouldn't it be nice if there is something that's needed by this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy, and you can pass it from here to here without sending it through the prop chain? If you could somehow teleport the variable here, something like this. If there is a variable that's being used in close children, this is fine. But if using context in distant children, if you use the context API, the thing that we're going to learn now, then this might be a parent and this might be a child, and this is the child and this is the child that needs it. You can teleport this variable here, teleport this variable here, teleport this variable across so many children without explicitly passing it down as children. Cool. That is what context API lets you do. How it lets you do it is a very simple thing. You just have to understand the context for it, like the APIs for it. But why you need it, how it helps you, is because it lets you get rid of prop drilling. All right. Cool. If you use the context API, you're pushing your state management outside the core React components. This should be core. Basically what this slide says is, and I think this is the second last slide for today. Okay, bhai, if you use this context API that I've been talking about, why did this become white? Never mind. If you use this context API that I'm talking about, number one, what are you doing? If this guy and this guy both require a component, you will, and let's say that component exists here, you can teleport it directly here. You can teleport it directly here. And the other thing it gives you is, lets you keep all state logic outside of your core React components. This is also sort of, basically it makes it slightly cleaner for you to do state management. This is a mildly good reason. State management, when we introduce recoil next, is what actually lets you do this, but this is also good. All right. Let's create a simple counter application first with the context API, without the context API, then with it. We've already created it without the context API. Let's try to create it with the context API. Let's try to pass down something from the top level app.jsx very low down the prop chain without passing it via props, and by using the context API. Cool. Let's modify the example a bit, and let's let me make it a way where we have a bunch of children. Okay, let's do this. Count. I will push this code in, so don't worry if you cannot write it. I will create the starting point for everyone. Tab tak just prepare your machines and your fingers. We'll be fixing this very soon. All right, this is done. You need this. Okay, this is a good start. All right, let me push this code in, guys, so you can copy it over to your machine. You can find the current code that I have here. Feel free to copy it locally in your React application. I'm going to give you guys 3 minutes. Let's take a small breather also. I think context is covered a few things in the last few seconds. So let me take a breather for 3 minutes. Let me look at Q&A for a while. Try to bring all of this code locally, and then maybe look at the context API yourself and try to solve it. Explain prop drilling. वही तो कर रहा था भाई इतनी देर से. Let me do that after I introduce context API. Let me happy to explain it again at the end. Let's do Dukaan assignment. Maybe not today. Link not working. I think it's working. Let me paste it in chat again. How is lazy loading different from normal JS sending a request and getting index.html of the page? Normal JS sending a request and getting index.html of the page. When does normal JS send a request to get index.html? JavaScript, whenever you send a request, is to get the backend routes, but I'm assuming, well, when you send backend requests, you're sending it to get back, JSON data, which is very small anyways. What we have done via lazy loading is, okay, we have gotten data from the backend, which is not JSON. It's the actual HTML, it's the actual JavaScript for that component, which is why it's a little different from, just getting the backend data, which is anyways very small. So it doesn't matter if you get it all at once or, in chunks. Context API one more time. Context API is, let's write the code, but what is we haven't gotten into the context API yet. We have gotten into the goal of it. The goal is, it will let you teleport props from one component to another without passing it down the chain. That is the goal of the context API. How is context API different from Redux? Redux, or what do you call it? Recoil, any state management tool, has 100 different optimizations compared to the context API. Context API isn't for making your code more performant. It is for making your code more cleaner to look at, versus state management tools like Recoil or Redux are for making it more performant. What is the substitute for using use navigate hook for class components? That is a great question that I don't know the answer for. I'm not even sure if React Router DOM works in class. Probably does work in class component, but I am not sure if there is a hook for. There is no concept of hooks in class-based components. So basically, not sure. I will have to Google it. Give a small brief of the previous topic, 20 minutes. Faster topic till now. I would urge you, Tushar, to go through the videos. Basically, a bunch of hooks we've covered until now. Alrighty. So today's class was about 3 things. Routing, which I'm assuming a lot of you understood. Prop drilling, which is sort of an anti-pattern in React. And the context API that lets you get rid of prop drilling. Currently, we are here. More specifically, what I want us to achieve is, okay, if you look at the code right now, what does it have? It has a bunch of components. And this is our final application for today. Increase button increases the count. Decrease button decreases the count. If you look at the component structure for today, it looks something like this. Share. It has app.jsx, which renders one child called count, which renders 2 children called buttons, and count renderer. This guy has one state variable called count. Let's just focus on count for now. And we are drilling it down to both buttons and to the count renderer. We want कि भाई I don't want to pass this as a prop to this guy. We want कि भाई somehow this teleports here and this teleports here without it ever reaching the count component. यहाँ पे I cannot pass it as a prop. It needs to go teleport directly from here. Daisy. Directly from here. Okay. Here to the buttons component and to the cloud renderer component. The middle component shouldn't do the job of drilling it down to the children. For that, you need to create what's called a context. Visually, top level app component, first child, and then count renderer and buttons. This count needs to directly go here and here, should not be accepted as a prop here. How can we do this basically? How can count directly reach here somehow? Const count equal to something. 1, let's say, and const count equal to 1. How can count directly reach here and here without being passed as a prop here? For that, first thing you have to do is in a new file or in this file, wherever you want, create the context. Which basically means create a thing that will let you teleport count from here to here. Create an object that lets you teleport it. Create a file, call it context.jsx or whatever you want to call it. And here export const count context. You can name it whatever you want, equal to create context. And I think you can pass it in a default value as well. I think so. I could be wrong. This is it. This is the teleporter you have created. This is something you have created. Okay, bhai, you will get a number and you have to teleport it from some place to another place. This context lets you do that. Let's see how you use it. I have just defined it for now. Haven't used it. Would urge you to maybe write this code on your side as well. What have we done? Just how we had used use state to declare a state variable, we have created a context to teleport that state variable across various components. I'm going to give you guys 10 seconds to copy it. All right. Now go back to app.jsx and do the first thing of sharing this across with children. So context basically has two parts. The first part is after you have defined this guy, you need to wrap anyone who wants to use it inside a provider. I repeat, wrap anyone that wants to use the teleported value inside a provider. This is the first thing you have to do. If you ever want to use the context API to teleport this count directly to this count renderer, you will need to make sure count renderer is wrapped inside a provider. What is a provider? Something that provides the context value later on. So basically this is what you have to do more realistically. Count context, which you can import from wherever you wrote it, dot provider. Just wrap all the components that want to use that teleported value inside a count context.provider and give this guy a prop of by your value is count. You need to teleport this count over to whoever uses it. This is one slightly, you have to chew some glass and chew the syntax basically. You can't just use the context API ekdam se. It can't just teleport it magically. You need to wrap all the components that need to use it inside the provider. That again, this guy provides you. when you initialized the context, this guy returns, an object which has a dot provider, which is why you can actually use it here, which is a React component, which is why, you're able to use it like this. That is the first part you need to basically chew a little bit and, understand the syntax. The second part is now actually using it. This part is slightly easy. Now all you have to do is const count equal to, maybe take some time and write this on your side. Give you guys 10 seconds. All right. Using it is much easier. All you have to do is you have a use context hook that React provides you, and then you can just pass in the context for which you want the value. I want the value for the count context. So basically this, that's it. Now I have access to this value over here, basically this count value over here, without it being passed as a prop here. No longer does this component need to have it as a prop. It will get teleported from here to here. And same is true for the buttons component. Here also, you can be like const count equal to use context, count context. So this is the final solution. Zoom out a little bit. Try to digest it. What are the good parts? Number one, context provider value equal to this. Number two, this is how you get it in this component. Number three, this is how you get it in this component. What have we gained? This count doesn't need to be drilled down via count. So many counts throughout this code base. This count state variable doesn't need to be drilled down via this count component to count renderer and buttons. It can directly teleport from here to here and directly teleport from here to here. If you run this app, it will just work the same. But first look at the code, try to understand it, breathe it in for 2 minutes, try to write it yourself. I'm happy to share the code. Look at this. Context.jsx was simple as this. Export const count context equal to create context. And this is the other side of it. Okay, once you have created the context, which usually people, as I said, you can, this lets you put some state outside your component tree, which isn't exactly true. The state is still, here, it's not outside, but the teleporting part, it's good to keep outside in a different file. All right. Another minute you take, look at it and try to digest it. And then this is great. This is all React had to offer to make your application a little more structured and clean. Then people realized this isn't enough, and Redux was introduced and Recoil was introduced, and then they provide you 10 more benefits on top of the fact that they also let you get rid of prop drilling. But let's say Redux did not even exist. The founder of Redux did not start the project, or Recoil did not exist. Then this was the best way to do state management. Okay, bhai, put the state variable in the as low as possible, and then pass it down via the context API. Do not pass it via, prop drilling. There's actually another thing called the reducer and a use reducer that is sort of the base for state management that React provides you. But I don't think we need it yet or at all. But there is, if you really want to go more advanced, okay, bhai Harkirat, what is the most efficient way of writing a React application without using state management tools like Redux or Recoil? You should read about this thing called the reducer and the use reducer hook that, is a little difficult to understand, but also another optimization. But do you need any of this? Will you ever use context or even use reducer? No. If you're using Recoil, then you don't really use these. But you will see these from time to time in various code bases. All right. Time to test this application. Refresh. Works as expected. We have successfully gotten rid of the prop drilling in our application. Harkirat, I still see set count being prop drilled. Yes. And for that reason, you can either create another context here for, set count context, or you can be like, bhai, count context has two parts, count and set count. Then here you can be like value equal to count comma set count. And then here you can use, wherever you need set count, you can be like count comma set count. So you can make this a very complex object. It doesn't have to be a number, and that way you can pass or teleport 10 different state variables and not just one. A lot of times you will see the context is, not a simple object, not a number, but a very big object. And that is how you can teleport a very big state across various children. All right. That's all I had to cover for today. I'm glad we were able to do the context API also. Let's do a quick poll and then go from there. How was the pace for today? And of course, we'll do doubt session. We'll also do another live class. Not live class, we'll do some live testing. All right. 80% great. All right. Surprising to me that only 3% said fast. I thought, slow. Only 3% said slow. I thought a lot of people would have thought this is slow. All right, guys. Let's do a quick poll. Is that clear? Iske baad we have a lot of time, so we can do doubt session and the new live platform testing. But is that clear? Great. 85% is great. Beautiful. So let me answer one set of questions until 8:50. Feel free to take a breather until then. And then let's go on to the other live platform that has been created. And let's see if it's able to handle the traffic for today. If you want to stick around, it's fine. If you want to go enjoy Lodi, please do. You don't have to stick around and do testing with me. But for the 15%, any set of actionable questions that I can help answer? All right. Make a video on Docker. There is one on YouTube already. Covers it pretty well. Who came first, context or Redux? I have no idea. Probably Redux, I think. I could be wrong. Under the hood, does context use prop drilling? Good question. I mean, what is drilling? What is drilling? It is syntactically it is incorrect. Syntactically, it's just syntactical sugar. It is very bad to look at. So does context use drilling? No, it got rid of drilling, right? I guess your question is, does context also, pass down components down the chain? The answer there is probably yes, it does, but you don't visually see it, which is what we want to get rid of. Prop drilling is this visual ugliness of it getting passed down, which it lets you get rid of. How does auth work in React full stack application? I understand how it works in SSR. Application by protecting some routes using middlewares. Also, so yeah, in any client-side application, people can reach the unprotected client route. If you have a /dashboard page that needs to be authenticated, if it's a React application, someone can get that bundle on the front end. You send backend calls which are authenticated, and then basically if there is a linkedin.com/admin page, and if LinkedIn is a React application, I can still go here, but I will receive some front end from the server. Then I will send the backend request and realize, oh shit, this user is not authenticated, and then they won't see any data. So as long as they don't see any data, you're good. If they see some front end for the admin page, that is fine. As long as there's no data field there, it's fine. Also, can I understand the way to connect front end and backend is via APIs, but how does MERN full stack application work in conjunction with auth? How to protect certain views? In React, there is no way for you to protect views. What you can do is, if this is your component that you want to protect, you can be like, this will return an empty div. If loading, you return an empty div. And then, add an effect that actually does the authentication and then sets loading to false. And then, sets auth to failed. And if it failed, the actual thing would never render. But that said, it's still part of the client-side bundle, so the user can still render it, but they can just see the HTML. As long as you were not able to fill any data here, you'll be fine. Can you please give cleaner explanation of how it is working? What is working though? Which part? Why do you always messed up recording? Most of the times you are one different tab, but recording other tab. Please share your screen. I know. I will keep that in mind. You mean in the offline video, right? What is the server when only run front-end npm run dev? Oh, this is a question not related to the slides, but the server is for hot reloading. Basically, if I add some code here, it automatically appears here. If of course it's written correctly. Basically, it's for something called reloading, or more specifically hot reloading, which basically means if I change some code here, it automatically appears here. That is what. That is why you need a server to be running here. Do you need a server to be running? No, you can also test it without a server. You can build the whole application and then open the HTML file, but it just gives you a lot of benefits during development, which is why it's a server. What is this? Okay, answer that. यार तुम दो बार सवाल क्यों डालते हो यार? Please inform about the VS Code setup needed for this week before live session begins. Some system takes up for setup. Please inform about the okay, got it. How to redirect to /dashboard when passing /landing in the URL? How to redirect to /dashboard when? Can you answer that question? Can you elaborate on that question? How does prop drilling and context API affect the real world and changes does it make for the user if we use it or not? User will see zero difference. Still underperformant using the context API, user will see no change. Only developer will see some change. User will see no change. If you want to see some performance benefits on the user, is when you introduce things like state management tools, which is Recoil, Redux. And tomorrow we will see how that actually helps. Someone asked for the code, so let me revert the code and push the latest code. So you have the solution on your side as well. Let me push this onto GitHub only. There we go. There we go. You should find it here on GitHub. Week 7 messed up code. All right. Please inform about the okay, answer that. How does prop drilling and context API okay, answer that? Will lazy loading fetch pages HTML JS file again and again when switching between pages? I think it caches them, so I think it will only do it once. Can't we just you only use props instead of defining all the individual props separately? Can't we just you can do that. You can just have a single big object rather than having 5 different state variables. Will lazy loading increase the backend calls? Not really. No, that completely independent of backend calls. Depends on how you've written the backend code. Okay. If you want to use this context in another file, you can just import it in another file, right? Just how I've imported it here, you can import it in a different file. You will only provide it once, by the way. You won't have multiple providers. But if you want to use it to get the data, you can get it multiple times. All right. Let's do some Q&A in another. So basically class is done, guys. I might answer a few more questions. In the other Q&A that we're doing now, which is going to be testing a platform. So bear with me here for 2 minutes and feel free to go and celebrate Holi. Let me just stop recording here. Bye everyone from the recording.